Hi, I'm Holly, and with my sister Heather, you're listening to Haunted Family Podcast, a weekly podcast about the paranormal, unsolved mysteries, and even true crime. This episode is a substitute episode.
Because at the last minute, Holly decided to change.
I did, but I have a very good reason. Do you want to start?
No, I think you should start since you're the one who threw this change upon us.
Okay. Well, let's talk about probably one of the most, I don't know. I was trying to say one of the most well-known urban legends, because that's what we're doing. Urban Legend Take 2, because there's a ton of urban legends, and we did not even tip the iceberg last year when we did Urban Legends 1. Probably one of the most common to me, because it was a staple at every sleepover we ever had, was Bloody Mary. We would have sleepovers like all the time. It seemed like sleepovers probably peaked like 6th and 7th
I still
grade.
have friends of mine from school who are like, sleepovers at your house was the best sleepovers ever. We looked forward to getting invited to your house.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have sleepover at a haunted house.
True.
So one of the things that we would do is we would go into the bathroom.
I don't actually remember anybody completing Bloody Mary at our house, though.
No.
Because our bathroom was creepy to begin with.
That's true. Principle of it is you go into a dark room. It doesn't have to be a bathroom, but a dark room with a big mirror.
The mirror in our bathroom it started about waist high and went to the ceiling, and it was wall to wall.
Yeah, so it was a huge mirror. And then you say, the number varies, but you say Bloody Mary over and over. 3, 13, 7, just the number varies. And what is supposed to happen is, in the mirror you see a vengeful, bloody girl, and she does something. She either attacks you, or she just scares you, or she comes out of the mirror. That's one of the that's one of the hallmarks of urban legends, is it changes, and there's no definitive guideline for an urban legend, because it's a story that's been passed around and passed around and passed around, kind of like the telephone game.
Yes. Well, originally Bloody Mary was a woman had to walk up a flight of stairs backwards while holding a candle. Right there, I'd be dead.
I'd be dead, and I'd be caught on fire and have broken bones. So
she would also have to be holding a hand mirror with all the lights out in the house. And when she would gaze into the mirror, she was supposed to see her future husband's face. If instead of seeing your future husband's face, you saw instead a Grim Reaper, that means you would die before you got married.
Huh. Now see, I've already been married, but that's one of those things that I kind of want to try it that way to see what would happen.
I remember that this was featured in a horror movie we watched way back in the day. I'm trying to remember what the name of it was.
Urban Legend.
No. Oh, I think I found it. Night of the Demons.
Oh, I remember that movie, but I don't remember them saying Bloody Mary.
No, I don't think they actually did Bloody Mary, but I remember they used a mirror to see, like, something. It's been 15, 20 years since I watched the movie. And instead saw a demon, and maybe that's how they released the demons in the movie. I'm not really for sure.
I think the demons were released in the movie because they were making out, and you know that if you are a teenager making out in a crematorium, like, you're gonna die.
Maybe. I'm gonna have to find that movie and watch it again, though.
Yeah, it was,
I I've not seen it in eons.
I know, it was a really good movie. How about the babysitter and the calls coming from in the house?
This one's always bothered me. I mean, I've never babysat.
I have.
I elderly sat for a while, but I've never babysat.
Yeah, well, this one dates all the way back to the 60s. I mean, I guess kind of before that, people probably didn't have, like, phone numbers probably weren't that super common.
And this is another one that kind of pops up everywhere. I think, like Bloody Mary, everyone has heard this urban legend at least once.
Yeah.
The premise of it is, teenage girl puts the children to sleep and is downstairs watching TV when the phone rings, and when she answers it, the voice on the other side says, "Have you checked on the children?"
Yeah.
She hangs up, and she says yes, and then hangs up, thinking that it's the kid's father, whatever, and it keeps calling back and calling back. She calls the police. The police tell her that they'll trace the next call, and the next time the person calls, the police inform her that the call is coming, that she has to get out of the house because the call is coming from inside the house. I don't actually know how that would work.
Well, I don't either.
I mean, is this one of those cases? I mean, now with cell phones, it's
Totally
completely possible. But like in the
I don't
60s
even have a
and
home
70s,
Yeah.
would this be like those kids who had two separate phones?
I mean, it could be. But I mean, I don't even have a home phone, so this urban legend kind of dies.
I don't have a home phone either, so I just said phone. I don't have a home phone.
Although I don't remember the real case, and that's really bothering me. But this kind of is a real case that happened not too long ago, only a tad different. So the girl, there was a girl that was staying at her family's cabin or something like that, and there was a man living underneath the house. Like, I don't know if it was the basement or if it was just like under the house, something like that. But she was like talking to her dad, and she kept thinking that there was like animals under the house, and shoot, I wish I could remember the story. And then she called.
There's actually been a few cases similar to that where people have found out that there's been people living in like crawl spaces in their attic and under their bed, and I think there's been a few cases in like Japan, and I'm sure in the United States as well.
Yeah, well, when the police, her dad told her to call the police, and when she called the police, somehow they were able to determine, and I have no idea how, that there was somebody else on the line listening in. And so they kept her on the phone until they got there. And when they got there, they found the man, and he was building a cage. So that's what she was hearing when she thought that it was rodents, was this man building a cage.
And he was really building a cage
for her.
So I'm doing a quick search trying to find that particular case, because I don't think I've heard that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real case, and I don't remember where in the world it happened from. There's a part of me that wants to say Colorado, but I could be wrong.
The killer in the back seat is a very common one.
I am actually terrified of this.
I remember, this is a story about our grandmother and how paranoid she was, but she always made sure to tell us to check our back seats before we got in the vehicle. Always.
Like, I don't like driving at night. for several reasons, but yet one of them is walking out to my car and not being able to instantly see whether or not somebody's hiding in the back seat. And I'm also like, I drive a Ford Focus. Like, you cannot possibly get underneath that car without jacking it up. It's so low to the ground. Yet I'm terrified that there's somebody under my car.
And, no one can hide in her back seat because her children barely fit in her back seat.
Yeah.
Not because Focuses are small, but because she lives in her car.
Yeah, seriously, my car is a junk pile.
Now in this story, in most common renditions of this story, a woman is driving home late at night and she notices a car pull up behind her and start flashing its lights at her. No, sorry, it doesn't flash its lights at her immediately. It goes past her, and then immediately backs off and gets right back behind her and starts flashing its lights at her. And it follows her all the way home, continually flashes its lights at her. And when she pulls into her driveway, the car behind her pulls right in after her. And not long after that, law enforcement shows up. Of course, as soon as she pulls in, she jumps out of her car and starts running towards her house. And after law enforcement gets there, they pull a man from her back seat, and she is told the true story that the guy who's flashing his lights at her was trying to alert her to the fact that there was somebody hiding in her back seat that he saw when he went to pass her.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because, like, how does he not know that? I mean, it could be like somebody she knows.
Yeah. Long road trip, kid in the back seat, napping. I heard a kind of interesting rendition of this story the other day on a podcast. I don't remember which podcast it was. A woman had left her younger son. He was in school, but he was younger. In the car while she ran into a convenience store and got a loaf of bread or something, simple like that. And she gets back in the car and she looks in her rearview mirror and there's a black-eyed child. We talked about that in a previous episode.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting right directly beside her son, almost touching him. She freaks out, jumps out of her car, leaves her door open, grabs her son from the passenger seat, runs into the store. The clerk, runs outside to check and see what's going on, and he doesn't see anything in the car. So he turns off her ignition, brings her keys in, and she calls her husband and has her husband come and get her car, and she takes his car home. Well, on his way home, he blacks out behind the wheel and wrecks and ends up in the hospital. He's fine, but yeah.
That's one of those evil things that black-eyed children do, apparently.
Yeah. And, maybe eventually we'll do another episode on black-eyed children. They're more and more cases pop up every day, and they're all terrifying, but they're all believable. Yeah. I mean, there's some that are not believable, but every account I've read has been, you can tell that the person is trying to be as honest as possible, and that they were truly terrified by their experience.
Yeah, I mean, even when I took Abby to get her tattoo, the artist was talking about black-eyed children.
No, speaking of that, I think I might have a YouTube episode we could film there.
Okay, what's that?
I think that we should have him invite either some of his friends or some of his clients if they want to. And we can hold a Ouija board session there and air it on YouTube at a later date.
That might work.
I think that would be really nice. If our listeners like this idea, send us a message. If you don't like this idea, tell me why.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you guys will love his shop. It is so cool. Okay, let's do one that pops up every freaking Halloween. Without fail. Are we
going to talk about the razor blades and candy?
We're going to talk about tainted candy.
Okay, now there has been a couple cases recently where this actually happened.
Razor blades?
Well, things found in candy. Let me see if I can find news articles about it. I'm thinking it happened in West Virginia.
Speaking of West Virginia, congratulations, West Virginia teachers, on your raise.
Woohoo! For those of you not in the loop, West Virginia school teachers has been on, they wasn't calling it a strike, they was calling it a planned work stoppage, because under their contract they are not allowed to strike. Actually, a guy that I was in band with was part of this, because he is a teacher in West Virginia. So, for the past 4 days, they have not been working. They have been protesting the fact that pretty much they were getting screwed over by their contracts. And this isn't... West Virginia teachers are not alone in this. Pretty much every teacher across the country is feeling this right now. So, today they announced they got a, 5% raise?
Yep, and all public service workers got a 3%.
Yeah. But before, and this is the true, nature of teachers. Before they decided on their work stoppage, they made sure that the children who would need food had places to get a warm meal while they were doing their work stoppage. And that parents who couldn't be at home with their kids during the work stoppage had a place for free to take their child. Teachers planned in advance. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
That is, because, I mean, if you work with kids, you realize that there are some that literally that meal at school is the only thing that they eat. That's not an urban legend, that's the truth. Did you find the story about the candy?
Yeah, there was 2 reported cases of needles found in candy in Wisconsin. Arcadia, Wisconsin. The needles were not visible until the candy was broken open. One was a Sweethearts Chew, and one was a Kit Kat. And, I bet people did this just because it has been an urban legend for so long. Completely unfounded urban legend. I don't know of any cases of this before, recently.
Yeah, I don't think that it has. But it's just weird that that you hear about it every single year. I remember the 80s was horrible. I mean, the 80s were just horrible. But it was horrible with people going on about razor blades and poison, and people would check your candy, and I'm like, look, how are you going to know if it's poisoned until I die?
We mentioned Night of the Demons earlier. There was a scene in Night of the Demons where razor blades were put in apples.
Yeah, so there was this old grumpy guy that hated kids, and he put razor blades in apples and was going to give them out, but he had no kids that showed up to his house because, well, he was an asshole. And the end of the movie, his wife, who was a real sweetheart, she baked him an apple pie using those apples. So you knew she would have had to have known because she cut them up.
Yeah. I'm going to have to rewatch that movie. It was the best.
Okay, I think we have an episode about this coming up. But, so we won't go into details, but Slender Man.
Hold on, I'm going to see. I don't know if we added Slender Man to our schedule yet.
I thought we did.
I only have us up through the end of August. No. We might add him to the later part of the year. That'd be a good episode. Okay, so Slender Man is like 7 foot tall and really real thin. Yeah. Whoever named him is really super imaginative.
That'd be probably like Abby. Do you remember when all of her cats' names were Abba?
Yes.
And not because she really liked the band?
No, she didn't even know the band existed. Okay, so Slender Man was actually invented by a something awful forum user, Eric Kunsen, in 2009. And it was sort of just a, creepypasta meme on the internet. Not real. Although, I have an acquaintance who argues that well before 2009, like before, internet really became a thing, he had and would play a Slender Man game.
Really?
Yes. But what was Slender Man actually supposed to do? What was his purpose?
I don't know, but apparently you're supposed to kill people as a sacrifice to him.
And there have been a few cases where people have tried to sacrifice to Slender Man. Most notably,
Two stupid
two
girls.
12-year-old girls in Wisconsin held down a classmate of theirs and stabbed her 19 times. The girl was able to crawl out of the woods and flag down a passing bicyclist, actually. Both of the people who attacked her have been sentenced to very long stays in mental health wards. I'm glad that they didn't get, I don't know if you can send a 12-year-old to prison. Juvenile hall, I guess. I'm glad that they're getting help instead of being strictly punished.
Okay, so Slender Man supposedly just abducts and terrorizes kids. I don't know that he has like a story.
I don't think so. If anybody actually has, anybody knows the premise of what Slender Man, why we're supposed to be afraid of Slender Man, let us know. There's nothing to me inherently creepy about it. So, I would say there's a good population of the world that is terrified of clowns. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I went to an estate sale late last year, and we walked in, and there was literally hundreds of clown figurines and dolls and posters in this house.
That would be a no. I'm not scared of clowns, but that's just weird.
Yeah, it was very weird. There's a particular urban legend, once again involving a babysitter. Urban legends are really hard on the babysitter.
I know. I think it's because they're inexperienced.
Yeah, and I think, it's trying to teach them to be more hypervigilant and aware of their wards.
Yeah.
But in this case, the babysitter is working for a very wealthy family who has, the big sprawling house, and the kids have tons and tons of just like everything.
Okay.
The parents tell her that they don't want her wandering around the house, especially after she puts the kids to sleep. But that she can watch TV in one particular room. Okay, weird, but rich people are sometimes weird.
That's true. One time I was working home health, and there was this house that I went to, and they literally had a locked, like a door knob that locked on one of their doors inside the house, like one of their like bedroom doors or something. I didn't go in it because obviously it was locked, but
Did I ever? And I sent you pictures of when we helped this family move.
Yeah.
And they had literally every door in their house was barricaded. Like all the exterior doors in the house was barricaded.
Can't say that I blame them.
No, they lived in a shady part of town. Like drug deals happening on your, almost on your steps. That kind of town. She calls in the room she's at. She notices there's this really creepy clown statue in the corner. And she tries to, ignore it, but it really is creeping her out. So she calls the dad and asks if she can switch rooms and watch TV in another room. And he instructs her to go grab the kids and run to the neighbor's house. Because it turns out that it wasn't a clown statue.
And it was
Apparently, no, the kids have been complaining that the clown statue had been watching them sleep for weeks. And the parents just, chalked it up to nightmares. Parents don't ever do that.
Yeah, really. Also, don't buy a life-size clown statue.
But it turns out it was a little person dressed in the clown costume that had been stalking the family for months. It would hide out in the attic during the day and come down to the house at night.
That's wild.
Yeah, well, I found an interesting one this week. Okay, not really found it, because I remember it from when we were children. But I was searching through old posts on the Reddit Paranormal page and found it. And yeah, I think I'm just going to read her story straight from this, thing, and then talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
This woman, user Lion versus Tuna, says, my mom and aunt have an interesting story with an old haunt. They grew up in the hollers in eastern Kentucky, where Holly and I are from.
Except I don't call it a holler, but okay.
No, but 99.9% of the people around here call them hollers.
I know. One time, because I lived in eastern Kentucky my whole life, and I moved to central Kentucky, and then when I came back, and I didn't call it a holler, and I remember somebody in my family saying that I was talking above my raising. And I was like, no, I'm talking like I'm $70,000 in debt on a college degree.
One night, they were 7 or 8 years old. They were sleeping in their grandma's house when my aunt woke up to someone whispering her name from the end of her bed. She said it sounded so terrifying that she was afraid to look, but it kept doing that. She shook my mom enough to wake her up, and my mom too heard it calling my aunt's name. They had the blankets over their head, and my mom finally got the courage to look down to the end of the bed. She said there were 2 male figures, bloody and slightly decaying, looking like they had been in a car accident. The figures stood at the end of the bed all night, whispering their names, while my mom and my aunt hid under the blankets. The figures eventually vanished before dawn. My mom and my aunt swear truth to this story still to this day. When they told my grandpa about it the next morning, he said that he knew several people who had similar experiences, and that those figures were called Bloody Bones and Rawhead in the area. A simple Google search will tell you that these figures exist in Southern folklore.
I don't really remember that story.
I do. I don't remember in what context it was told to me, but I do remember hearing other people telling almost identical stories to what this user wrote. And I did some research on this. Apparently, the first written account of Bloody Bones and Rawhead actually is in a 1548 copy of the Oxford English Dictionary.
Really?
Yes. And then again, it is mentioned in... Hold on. Apparently I didn't write that number down. And it's then again mentioned in the Dictionary of English Language in 1755. And there's an account recorded by John Locke in 1693 that says Rawhead and Bloody Bones and other such names was used to awe children and keep them subjugated. So apparently there is some deep roots to the stories of Bloody Bones and Rawhead.
Yeah.
I did a little informal post on my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page. I said, how many of you remember being told stories about bloody bones as a child? 9 people liked the post and, saying that they have heard it, and 6 people actually commented that they remember these stories from their childhood. And I just had the post up for like a couple hours before we went live with this episode. And they range in age from like our parents' age to people that I went to school with remembering these.
Yeah, I don't remember it at all.
Well, in some accounts, Rawhead is supposed to be like skinless, like he's been skinned. And Bloody Bones is sometimes described as a bloody, headless skeleton. But in other cases, they are just badly decomposed corpses.
So, anyway, it's just disgusting.
Yes. And I remember hearing these stories as a child and thinking, yeah, I hope I never see that. That might actually be the one paranormal encounter that does terrify me.
I have 2 that are, well, okay. I have one called Footprints in the Snow, where a girl is watching her little sister, so another babysitter one, and she puts her sister to bed, and she's watching some TV in their living room or whatever. So eventually she got bored and turned off the TV and just kind of curled up on the couch with a blanket and was watching the snowfall, because they had a large sliding glass window, which large sliding glass doors terrify me. So she's sitting there watching, and then all of a sudden she sees a man walking towards the sliding glass door, and he starts to pull something shiny from his coat.
Sliding glass doors terrify me.
I know, it's what I just said. They terrify me too.
Like, it's really hard to actually secure a sliding glass door, because you could just throw something through it, like lawn furniture.
Well, that's true. Okay, so although when I lived in Lexington, in the ghetto...
How many times did that sliding glass door get broken up, though, accidentally?
3 times by people mowing, and they throw a rock through it. So annoying. Anyway, so she sees the man start to pull something out of his coat, and she covered her head and stayed that way for a while. I don't know how long. She finally decides to uncover her head, and he's gone. So she calls the police. The police come over, and there's no footprints outside, but there's wet feet print on the carpet leading up to the couch where she's sleeping. So he wasn't coming through the sliding glass door. He was already in the house.
That would terrify me.
Yeah, me too.
Remember that weird house that was kind of across the road from us growing up?
When we moved?
The one up on the hill, yeah.
Yeah, you know who lives there, don't you?
No.
Wait, are you talking about the one directly across from us, or the one down to the left a little bit?
No, the one down to the left to it a little bit.
Oh, okay.
The one where the vampires used to live.
They weren't really vampires.
I'm pretty sure they were vampires.
They weren't vampires.
I'm pretty sure they were vampires. Anyway, several different owners of that house all reported seeing that it was, I guess, a split level. You walk in and you're on a landing.
Yeah, it was the only one in the neighborhood like that.
Yeah, you go down, and downstairs is like a big den and the kitchen, and then upstairs was a huge living room, and then all the bedrooms. And they would see wet footprints in the downstairs all the time. The reason why I call it the vampire house is because these people moved in and they only lived there for a little bit of time. And it was the middle of summer when they was living there, and anytime they'd go check the mail, they would like put on parkas and pull the hood up and go check the mail and then run back in the house. And they moved out in the middle of the night.
Well, they probably owed somebody money.
Maybe. If that's the case, then that is the neighborhood for hiding out when you're running from something.
Well, I mean, it is a good neighborhood to hide out, because why would you go look for anybody there?
But I will still forever call it the vampire house.
Okay, aside from Bloody Mary, this is literally probably the most common urban legend. The "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" Which is also why Holly turns on the light before she walks into any room. And actually, just to make sure that I always have light, Ernie got me this lantern that you raise it up and it's like 4 million degrees brightness. I know light's not measured in degree, but it's really bright.
Lumens.
Yeah, it's like 4 million of them.
Yeah. I get laughed at all the time because I will not walk from my side of the bed to the bathroom, which is 5 feet?
Yeah.
Probably a little bit further than that, but I mean, super close. Without turning on a light. Actually, I will turn on my bedside light, and then I will turn on the lights that are on my side of the bedroom, and then I'll turn the bathroom lights on.
Yeah. Well, in this story, so you got two roommates who are complete opposites, and one goes out. In the story, she either goes to the library, or she goes to a party, or she goes to hang out with friends, but the gist of it is she's gone. And the other roommate stays at home. And while she's there, she's murdered. But all the lights are off when the roommate comes back to just grab something or to go to sleep. But she doesn't turn on the light. She just either goes directly to bed or she grabs what she needs and she leaves.
In some cases, it's like she's grabbing her textbooks for the next day and going to stay in somebody else's room or something like that.
Yeah.
In every story, what she grabs changes.
Right. But why would you not turn on the light if you're looking for something?
Maybe she knew exactly where it was.
That's not my life. I can't relate. Anyway, when she either wakes up or when she comes in and she does turn on the light, roommate is dead, and there is a note that says, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" Or in a version that I hate because it involves a puppy.
No, I don't even want to hear that one.
Okay, well, I won't. I'll just say what happens. So when she wakes up the next morning, there's a note on the floor that says humans can lick too. Yeah, because she put her hand down expecting her puppy, and I guess. But you know what? I've been licked by enough animals to know the difference if a human was licking my hand or an animal. Unless a human's got some kind of disorder that makes a really scratchy, sandpapery tongue.
Yeah, I would think that I could tell the difference, but Chloe's tongue feels like really soft, warm, wet taffy. And it's like 1,000,000 miles long. She's a 3-pound Yorkie, and her tongue is longer than her body. And the fact that she's now 13 years old and has lost most of her teeth that has to be fed, spoon-fed food, her tongue sort of hangs out of her mouth a little bit, and it's cute.
Oh, see, that's how Doodles is because she only has one tooth.
Yeah, I think Chloe has 2. So we have to warm up her food, and then she wants to eat off a spoon, so we have to spoon feed her. She's got us trained. Okay. This one's kind of urban legend, but kind of also, what's the word I'm looking for? Cryptoid?
Okay.
And it's a hitchhiker story. But how many hitchhiker stories have you heard where after you let the hitchhiker out of your car, it changes into something else? Or it just disappears completely? This one, hitchhiker ones really stood out to me because I actually picked up a hitchhiker this week and drove her home, and yeah. She did not change anything weird, and she did not murder me.
Well, that's good.
But I can't in good conscience let a little old lady walk all the way across my town in a pouring rainstorm with no umbrella.
Well, I have a urban legend about picking up a little old lady, so maybe I won't tell you that one.
But no, I picked her up, took her home, and then since I was already in town with a bunch of my eggs to sell, I gave her like two dozen eggs. Because I'm nice sometimes.
Aww.
Okay, well, in one of these stories, this is another one I found on the Reddit Paranormal pages. The football coach was telling a story about the time that he was coaching at a small college in Montana. And he said after one practice one night, he was driving home and it was just fields and fields and fields of nothing. We've drove through Montana and...
That's true.
That's very true. You will drive almost all day without seeing people sometimes.
They did not call it Big Sky Country for nothing.
As he's driving, he sees a hitchhiker. So he pulls over without, second thought, picks up the guy. He says the guy's wearing a really outdated suit and a really stylish hat. Looking more like the 1940s than whatever time period this was. I'm guessing 80s, 90s. Without saying a word, the guy gets in the truck, the bench seat, sits there. The teacher asks him where he needs to go, and the guy just points forward. So they drive without talking for miles and miles. All the while, the hitchhiker, just pulls his hat down low and sort of dozes off in the seat next to him. Until suddenly, he sits upright, looks out the window, and says, "Stop the car right now." The teacher pulls over, lets the guy out, and the guy takes off running into one of the fields. It's a field full of crops, so, within just seconds, you can't see the guy anymore. Teacher thinking that, hey, maybe the guy had poop or something. Well, when I read that part of the story, my first thought was Hannah.
Yeah.
So he waits for a little bit, and then he gets back in the car and starts driving off. And as he's looking back in his rearview mirror to pull out on the highway, he sees the hitchhiker now on all fours running after the truck.
Oh.
Yeah, so he does what any sane, logical person would do at this point in time. And
floor it?
Yes. He says the whole time he's watching this guy chase the car on all fours. He calls his wife and tells her about the story, when he gets back into town. And apparently it was an old urban legend in that town, and that several of her co-workers has told the exact same story and said that's why you never pick up hitchhikers on that road. And that actually brings up an interesting topic of crawlers, which I think we will be doing a show about probably in the later half of this year. Because crawlers are a very interesting phenomenon. So, you have a hitchhiker story?
Yes.
Hold on. Just because we're talking about, the Montana area, I think we were actually in South Dakota, though. We picked up a hitchhiker, early 80s. Turns out it was a relative of ours.
Yeah, but I had been fed, don't pick up hitchhikers, don't pick up hitchhikers, don't pick up hitchhikers, don't pick up hitchhikers.
You couldn't even drive at the time.
No, but Grandma would always tell me how bad it was, and that's how you get killed. So when we stop and pick up a hitchhiker, the first thing I do is say, "You're not going to kill us, are you?" And then when I found out that he was a relative, I really wanted to know if he planned on killing us.
So, what's your hitchhiker story?
So, hitchhiker story is, person picks up this little old lady, and they're driving down the road, and they start to get creeped out by the lady. Like, she's got a purse in her lap and she's got gloves on, and I don't know, she just seems a little odd. And somehow either they stop at a gas station, or anyway, they stop. She ends up getting stopped or something, and it turns out that the little lady is really a killer, and the purse has knives and torture devices, and the gloves are actually like surgical gloves to keep fingerprints.
Well, I mean, because if you're going to be murdering somebody, you don't want to leave prints behind.
That's true, but usually our killers don't really care about such things, and that's how they get caught. But back to the whole like picking up the werewolf guy. That reminds me of some show that I used to watch with Papa, and I cannot even remember the Twilight Zone. Maybe.
He used to watch the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I think that might have been a Twilight Zone episode. Well, this guy it's kind of that same story. This guy picks up this guy, and they're having a good time, and just talking and having good conversation, and everything is fine. And then the guy kind of looks out the window and sees the full moon, and he turns from the window, and then he turns back, and he morphed into a werewolf, and he attacks the guy as he's driving.
That sounds typically Twilight Zone.
Yeah, well, I remember that the episode terrified me, and I screamed, and I hid my head, and I may or may not have also been crying. But then right after that was a commercial for coffee, and in true Papa fashion, he was like, "Why are you crying? It's just coffee."
Oh my god, I remember that!
Oh.
Fun times.
Yeah. This was before he had his tracheotomy. Afterwards, he couldn't talk. He would still... He did not do very well with covering his stoma and talking that way, and he didn't have an electric box thing, so he would just kind of like whisper at you.
He could say words if he got really mad. So they usually end up being cuss words.
Yeah, one time I don't remember what I was doing, but I drove him crazy, and he was yelling. Well, he was whispering at me, but his hands were like flailing, like he was talking with his hands. He was mad. And I remember that when he was finished, I said, "Well, you don't have to yell at me." And he died laughing.
Fun times.
Fun times, yep. Of course, there's also the urban legend of speaking of picking up hitchhikers, you're picking up a hitchhiker on a deserted road.
Yeah, I think we actually talked about Resurrection Mary in our last episode. And then, she's probably one of the most famous ones.
And then they end up taking you and then dropping you off near either near the site where they died, or the site or the cemetery. Yeah. Or in some cases all the way home. And then the people who live in the house tell the driver that they've passed away.
One thing I've learned while trying to research this episode is that a lot of people have a hard time drawing a distinction between folklore, legend, and paranormal.
Yeah.
Like, there was a list I found online, folk legends from all the states or something like that, and most of them were just ghost stories.
Yeah.
Like, they listed Arkansas, the Boggy Creek Monster. I really wouldn't call that folk legend. I'd consider that more of a cryptid story. Yeah. Basically, Boggy Creek Monster is Sasquatch. Only it's Arkansas Sasquatch.
I think it's funny how the legend of Sasquatch has so many different names.
Yeah, and you know what? The more I actually research this and look at the different stories and look at how far back in history stories of Sasquatch goes, kind of believe there might be some truth to it.
Yep, I agree with you.
One from Trumbull County, Connecticut. Shout out to our Connecticut listeners.
Woo,
You all are our number one fans. Is the Wicked Witch of Monroe, Hannah Crana. Apparently, in the 19th century, her husband died mysteriously after he fell off a cliff.
Usually, if you fall off a cliff, you're going to die.
All of the locals believe that she had bewitched him. And apparently, she would also cast spells on people that she hated. Well, I mean, yeah. What else are you going to do with your magical powers?
Well, I mean, probably that. I mean, honestly.
Right before she died, she apparently she made some specific demands of whatever family and friends were gathered around her. She didn't want her coffin to be carried to the cemetery in a wagon. She wanted to be carried down on foot inside her coffin. After she died, they tried to take the easy way out, loading her on a wagon and, just hauling her to town that way, hauling her to the cemetery on that way. But her coffin kept falling off the wagon. So it forced them to carry her. When the townspeople got back from the cemetery, they found her house fully engulfed in flames. So, legend was that she used her witchcraft to burn her house down so that the townspeople that she hated couldn't get her secrets. Honestly, that kind of sounds like a witchy thing to do.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't know that you need to use power. All you need to do is, light a match.
But this was the 19th century, so...
That's true. Channel a lightning bolt or something.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe next time we're in Connecticut, we should visit her grave.
Let's do that. Are we ready for a stupid criminal?
Well, actually, I found another interesting one. We get these same urban legends locally. How many of our listeners live near a man-made lake?
I don't know. Is Cave Run man-made?
I think Cave Run is. I know Paintsville Lake is a man-made lake. Well, oftentimes when these lakes were created, they didn't tear down the things that would exist below the waterline.
Oh, you know what? I know. I love driving around the backside of Paintsville Lake, and you see all those houses that look like they're on an island.
Yes, and there's some houses that are under the water too, and I think one local lake has a 4-H camp under it. Don't remember which one that one is, but actually, a woman that I met many, many, many years ago on the Shadowlands message board, and she has become one of my soul sisters. Turns out that her family, her grandmother's farm, is under Paintsville Lake.
Really?
That her family is, and some of her family still live in my area, but that her parents had moved, to the other side of the country years ago, and that's where she was born and raised. And here we meet online, and it turns out that, I'm pretty much neighbors with some of her family.
You're not talking about Luann, are you?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, there's a story, you find similar stories, though with every time that this happens, that the lake becomes haunted by the graves that are still left under it, or
people who have died in it.
Yeah. One story I found is Lake Lanier in Georgia. It's apparently the largest man-made lake in Georgia, and there's a racetrack under it, and multiple cemeteries, and fully intact towns. And that now the lake is haunted. In 2011, there were 17 deaths in this lake.
Damn it.
And sometimes the bodies are not recovered. But I mean, you get that with water deaths. That sometimes the bodies get tangled up in debris at the bottom of the lake, old trees, and unless you send a dive team down, you're not finding them. And even then, sometimes when you send a dive team down, it's too murky for them to find the bodies. And another one, and I know people at our local lake say the same thing, and I think they probably said the same thing about Cave Run and other lakes, is that when you're swimming, you'll feel hands or, arms or hands touching you under the water, grabbing at your ankles.
That's why I don't like dark water.
Very Crystal Lake-ish.
Ugh.
So, everyone ready to go swimming at the lake?
No. I mean, maybe they are. Not me. 1, it's too cold. And 2, I don't swim in dark water.
Yeah. One of our cousins actually died at a lake at night. At Paintsville Lake, actually.
That is true. Stupid criminal time?
Well, one more story.
Okay.
It's another lake story. And this one comes from particularly Massacre Rock State Park, but really all across the Great Plains. The first recorded account of this was in 1805, and it was recorded by the Shoshone tribe. Legend goes that during a time of famine, Native American women were forced to make the terrible decision to drown their children in the river rather than watch them starve to death.
Damn.
And the legend is that these babies grew gills and fins and survived.
And became mermen?
And became what is called water babies. That now haunt these rivers and lakes. But they will cry as a way to get revenge on their mothers. They will cry and lure people into the water to try to find them and then kill them.
God. See? Don't go in dark water. It's scary.
True, but it's also kind of fun.
No.
Okay, and now since you were desperate for this...
Well, this is an hour-long episode already.
Stupid criminal time.
Okay.
And this time it is from Kansas City.
What? Not a Kentucky one?
Nope. Not a Kentucky one. In this story, a man on a yellow ATV led police on a wild chase through Northland for about an hour on a Sunday afternoon. Just nice Sunday driving on your ATV.
Right.
While completely and totally naked.
Okay.
And the sad thing is that he alerted officers for like an hour.
Naked. Driving for an hour. Damn it.
At one point, he found a break in the fence and took it, and then circled back around and got on Interstate 435 going the wrong way to continue his, illusion of the police. But he was eventually arrested, and I'm pretty sure that it was found out that he had drugs in his system, or at least some really nice alcohol. Because you don't get naked and ride your four-wheeler through town unless you're drunk. I mean, if you want to get naked and ride your four-wheeler through the trails,
go ahead.
Those cuts and scrapes are all on you, buddy. I ain't gonna do it.
That's funny.
Yeah. So we have a nice episode coming up for you next week. We are back.
I'm not gonna change it.
No, we are back with a murder episode next week. Actually, we have 2 murders. No, we have all of March is pretty much murders.
Murder?
Yeah. So, Marches for Murder. That's what I'm going to tag it on Instagram. Marches for Murder.
Cool. I mean, not cool about murder, but...
Yeah. And, you know, this happened completely by accident. We did not plan for March to be like one murder after another.
Well, hopefully it's just episodes about murder and not like actual physical new murder.
I am not planning on murdering anybody next month or at any time.
No promises.
Like I said, we still have the last half of this year to schedule, apparently. So if you got an idea for an episode, send us a message at hauntedfamilypodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram. We are Haunted Family Podcast. Right?
We are.
I think we are Haunted Family Podcast everywhere, with the exception of Twitter. And
which I forget
Twitter,
we even have.
Yeah. Well, I just did Twitter. I just signed us up for it.
Oh.
And on Twitter, we are at Haunted Family. So tweet us, Instagram us, Facebook us, email us. We would love to hear from you. We would love to hear your personal stories with the paranormal, true crime, or, you know, unexplained mysteries. Write to us. We are, well, I mean, despite what Holly says, we're pretty friendly people.
No.
We're not going to bite your head off, and we're not going to tell you that your story is crazy.
Oh, no. Because, we like crazy at the bedroom.
Because, I mean, we've had some pretty crazy stuff happen to us, so, I mean, we would love to find somebody who can top our stories. But yeah, send us a message. We'd love to hear from you.
And if you have a stupid criminal, we're all about that.
Like us and rate us on iTunes, Stitcher,
wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, wherever you get your podcasts from. We are on all of them, I think.
I believe we are. But I mean, if we're not, they can't tell us that we're not because they won't know because they're not listening to us.
And if they're not listening to us, they're losers.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another point. So, if you've got friends who don't listen to us, but they like the paranormal, well, I mean, share a link with them. Bring them into the family.
If you want to start a podcast yourself, use our affiliate code, Haunted Family PB, on Podbean.
Yes. If you would like to see a particularly interesting adventure that I had over, not last weekend, weekend before that, I think, then check out our YouTube page. There's a link to it in our Instagram. We are not fancy enough to have our own special link yet, because you have to have 1,000 followers or something on Instagram, on YouTube.
I think so.
I don't remember. But I went to the Post Town Elementary School. I just stopped by with my aunt because my dad and several of his brothers had went to school there when they were in grade school. And it turns out that it's open for tours. So we went exploring the place, and I filmed it and took pictures. And when I came home, I edited it all into a nice YouTube video, and it is live on our YouTube channel. So watch it and give us a big old thumbs up, because we like that. We like to know that you all like what we're doing.
Yep, we do.
We're vain like that.
Yep, we are.
We also
not the first time I've been called that.
We also have an episode up where Holly and I show you how to build a Ouija board and use it.
Unsuccessfully or successfully. You won't know until you watch it.
Yes. And there'll be more videos like this coming up.
I actually have a video that I've edited and I need to put up soon.
Okay. We can't promise you any set upload schedule for YouTube. I mean, for our podcast, we will upload almost always once a week, but it's just so hard for us to get together to actually film.
Yeah, but once it warms up, we're gonna try harder.
Yeah, and we've got some interesting ideas lined up for YouTube. So stick with us, bear with us. It will get better.
It will.
And you get to see our bright, shining, lovely faces.
Yay! And Heather's news anchor hair.
No, I've let it grow out a little bit. I need to get it cut again. Back into my news anchor shape.
And mine hasn't been cut in forever. It's just there.
You should have Abby cut it for you. She's apparently really good at that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm lazy. I just like to put it up in a bun and be done with it. Anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.